Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientific minds in history. His laws of motion and universal gravitation shaped our modern understanding of physics. But what if I told you there was a hidden side to Newton? A secretive, obsessive, and even ruthless side that few know about. This is the story of how a man born into struggle rose to become a legend, yet lived a life filled with rivalries, alchemy, and a quest for hidden knowledge. Isaac Newton was born prematurely on Christmas Day, 1642, in Woolsthorpe, England. He was so small and weak that no one expected him to survive. His father had died 3 months before his birth, leaving his mother alone. At age 3, his mother remarried, leaving Newton behind with his grandparents, an abandonment that would haunt him for the rest of his life. As a child, Newton was more interested in mechanical devices than playing with other kids. He built intricate sundials and water clocks, showing an early glimpse of his genius. But he also carried deep emotional wounds. Later in life, he wrote a list of his sins, including a chilling one, threatening to burn my mother and stepfather's house down. Newton's school years were rocky. His mother wanted him to be a farmer, but his teachers saw his potential and convinced her to send him back to school. In 1661, he entered Cambridge University, paying his way by working as a servant for wealthier students. He studied the works of Aristotle and Descartes but wasn't satisfied with what he read. He wrote, "Plato is my friend, Aristotle is my friend, but my best friend is truth." He was determined to find truth through his own discoveries, not just by memorizing past knowledge. Then came 1665. The Great Plague struck Europe, forcing Cambridge to shut down. Newton returned home for 2 years, but instead of idling, he revolutionized science. During this time, he 1. Developed calculus, though he didn't publish it, leading to a later feud with Gottfried Leibniz. 2. Used a prism to prove that white light is made of all colors, debunking Aristotle's theory. 3. Conceived his famous theory of gravity after watching an apple fall from a tree. 3. The idea that the same force that pulled the apple down kept the moon in orbit changed our understanding of the universe. Newton was not just a genius, he was also intensely secretive and fiercely competitive. When he returned to Cambridge in 1667, he became a professor and quickly rose in academic circles. But he avoided publishing his work, fearing criticism. In 1672, he finally shared his groundbreaking findings on light and color with the Royal Society. But one man, Robert Hooke, challenged him. Hooke, known for his work with microscopes and elasticity, argued that Newton's conclusions weren't entirely original. Newton was furious. This rivalry lasted for decades, with Newton even erasing Hooke's portrait from history when he became president of the Royal Society. Then there was the infamous calculus controversy. German mathematician Gottfried Leibniz published his work on calculus in 1684, but Newton claimed he had developed it 20 years earlier. The problem? Newton had never published his findings. When Leibniz sought an official ruling, Newton used his influence as head of the Royal Society to ensure that the committee sided with him. Today, we recognize that both men independently developed calculus, but Newton was relentless in making sure he received sole credit. Despite his feuds, Newton's intellect was undeniable. In 1687, he published Principia Mathematica, one of the most important scientific works ever written. In it, he outlined 1. The 3 laws of motion, the foundation of classical physics. 2. The law of universal gravitation, explaining how all objects attract each other based on mass and distance. 3. The mathematical equations that govern planetary motion. This work unified celestial and terrestrial physics, proving that the same laws applied both on Earth and in space. It was a turning point in human understanding of the universe. Beyond science, Newton had an obsession with alchemy, the belief that metals could be transformed into gold and that there existed a philosopher's stone capable of granting eternal life. He spent years experimenting, writing thousands of pages on alchemical theories. Some believe this exposure to mercury led to his erratic behavior and mental breakdown in 1693. Newton also studied biblical prophecies, convinced that the Bible contained hidden knowledge about the end of the world. He predicted the apocalypse would happen in 2060, though he left room for uncertainty. His theological manuscripts remained hidden until they were discovered in 1936. In 1696, Newton took an unexpected turn. He became Warden of the Royal Mint. Britain's currency was in crisis due to widespread counterfeiting, and Newton took it upon himself to reform the system. He personally investigated counterfeiters, even going undercover in London's criminal underworld. He prosecuted dozens, with some ending up on the gallows. His work saved the British economy, and he was later promoted to Master of the Mint, a position he held until his death. In 1705, Queen Anne knighted him, making him Sir Isaac Newton, the first scientist to receive this honor. But despite his success, Newton's later years were marked by paranoia and loneliness. He never married, had few close friends, and spent much of his time defending his legacy. He continued to feud with Leibniz, and when Leibniz died in 1716, Newton reportedly showed no sympathy. Newton died in his sleep on March 20, 1727, at the age of 84. He was buried in Westminster Abbey, an honor reserved for Britain's greatest figures. His work laid the foundation for modern physics, engineering, and even space travel. But he wasn't just a brilliant scientist, he was a deeply complex man. A genius who shaped the modern world but also lived in isolation, driven by obsession, rivalry, and a relentless pursuit of knowledge. Newton's story teaches us that genius comes at a cost. His discoveries changed humanity forever, but his personal struggles remind us that brilliance often comes with a price. He was secretive, competitive, and sometimes ruthless, yet his contributions remain unparalleled. So, what do you think? Was Newton a misunderstood genius, or did his rivalries tarnish his legacy? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories of history's greatest minds.